Hello and welcome to Working Title, a segment in which I write an entire book and record it. I'll start off by saying the genre of this book is fantasy because I don't have to do any research unless I want to, and I didn't want this. Well, let me start by saying I didn't want this to be something that was close to my heart. I had just come up with the concept the day I recorded this session of writing. And, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted it to, the whole thing just recorded, nothing planned ahead of time, just jumping straight into it. And that's what I wanted. I didn't want it to be something close to my heart where I would spend like an hour worrying about the wording of a paragraph or like really intently, frustratingly trying to figure out what the characters were going to do next or say next or what the meaning of it all was. No, I wanted it to just be an adventure. So when I first sat down to start this, my attitude was like, all right, let's just get into it. Let's get to the meat of it, right? But then I was like, I stopped and was like, wait, this needs details. Like where we're starting it, though it was actiony, there needs to be details to orientate the reader and also to focus in on. There needs to be certain details expressed, and we need to slow down on certain details because of what is important to this character. And I was struggling with that in this first session. So you'll probably see me do that a lot, but you see me pause, where the cursor's not doing anything. But that was the big hurdle in this first session, is figuring out. I wasn't really I wasn't even focused on which details to express. I just expressed details. So there are some things in here that aren't necessary at all. Some things that just feel slow. Like it feels slow and fast at the same time. Like it feels very quick in some places and very slow in others, especially with dialogue that doesn't need to be there, that's redundant. I felt this first session was very vague as well, because I was kind of just lost in it, I didn't know what to hit. Aranthus's brother, I kind of just threw in there at last minute. We'll see what happens with him. I haven't really decided yet, but I like so far I'm liking the like the theme of this electricity thing. That was a happy accident. And so far, the mother is like just a vague shadow right now. That's, you know, in terms of character, she's just vague. I was too focused on what I wanted to have happen after this to really stop and think, oh, hang on, I gotta focus on this for right now to build up to that point. I might change the name of the light elves. I don't like the characters referring to the light elves as light elves, because it just feels really awkward and it makes the racism feel too obvious. So I might call them something else. They might still be light elves, that race or species, whatever, but I might just name them something else. I don't know what yet. I also feel like these people, like, they had to have been expecting these light elves that they were on the way, so I feel like they should have been better prepared for the moment that they hit. So that's something that could be changed as well. You know, I wanted this to be something that I wouldn't think about. I was thinking, oh, you know, this ain't going to be something I'm going to think about until I'm in the moment writing it, you know, but I think it was destined to just not work out that way, because after I finished it, I was thinking back on it and just feeling kind of not that great about it. Yeah, the little lockbox was kind of thrown in there as well. You know, the idea that she looks back at her bedroom for probably the last time just made me think, well, surely there's got to be something in there she would go back for. But I like the moment here where I express the bedroom and the red firelight. Like, the whole of the bedroom is like her beating heart. This is the first time I've ever written fantasy. At length, anyway. So, trying a lot of new things all at once. This family, they're dark elves, by the way. You know, I think I can go ahead and just say that. That's not expressed in the text here, but so you know what I mean when I'm talking about light elves, dark elves. I don't really want to call them either of those, but I have no idea what else to call them. I'm still laughing at beated. Yeah, so like I said, I was too focused on wanting to get to the meat of what, you know, the meat of the concept that I thought was going to be pretty interesting to write about, and had to stop because, oh, I needed all this detail before I got to that moment, which is this character, Aranthis, running into another character. meeting another character, and that's where the concept came from, just these two characters interacting with each other. This part right here I fumble around with because I'm like, well, all this stuff that they're just carrying in their hands just feels really awkward. No, what am I gonna do about that? So I don't know. I'd probably change that too. But yeah, and I was thinking, you know, after I'd written in this, the way I'd introduced the story was very. I didn't feel good about it. So I thought, should I have introduced it this way? Especially when I was more focused on trying to get to, meeting the other character. And I thought, well, maybe I should double back and try it again. But you know what? I'm gonna leave it as it is and just keep going from there. Try to power through it. I think it can work. I don't know if I will end up revising this whole thing. I don't know what's going to happen with this segment. I just wanted to try it. I've had the idea to try it for about a year. And I'm trying it now because I want some change in my life, and this seemed like a good time to try it out. I don't know what's going to happen with it. Hopefully I will keep up with it because I really like the idea and of just writing an entire book and it being recorded, and anybody can see it, whatever. And I had some fun with it. If I come across a part that I'm just not, I'm slugging through, it's dragging, I will try and change it to make it more fun for me. I want to try and keep this fun for me, and hopefully for whomever out there is watching. Yeah, all this detail with the town as well, because like the character isn't going to be focused on the detail of the town, so I can't really stop and focus on all that stuff. I was thinking maybe we'll come back later in a different dark elf town and really look, and it'll remind her of her home. I'm coming up really quick on the end here, so I thank you for watching. Welcome back to Working Title, the Emerald Knight Part 2. Since my first video, I have taken to naming the book. I mean, it's in the title of the first video, but I couldn't figure out what to name the book until much later, right before I started uploading the first two. But its name will become clear as we move on through the story. Like I said, it was inevitable. It became inevitable for me to start thinking about this project outside of when I was working on it. Like I said in the first video, I only wanted to work on this as I was working on it, when I sat down to work on it, but, well, silly me. Anyway, I will say about this session that I struggled with figuring out what was going to happen next. Several times I felt like I was getting close to writing myself into a corner, and especially with how I ended this session, but we'll get to that later. But I just, with what was, with where I left things off last time, you know, in need and in want of details, I focused a lot on that this session. And I noticed that, watching the recording, I noticed that whenever I insert detail, I tend to make long sentences, really just sentences that run on too often. And I will try and be more conscious of that in the future. But then again, you know, this is the rough draft, and you know, I can't always focus on that sort of thing. The rough draft is, you know, getting the ideas out of your system and onto the page, you know? That's the purpose of the rough draft. It's only when you go back to revise, however many times you want, do you clean it up and refine it. But yeah, whenever I, like this man who emerged from the alleyway, or between a couple of buildings, it's not exactly a city, it's a village. Like this man, I just came up with him. Okay, let's just put him in. And then I got concerned with, like, okay, I need to explain him and, you know, add detail about him, what's going on with him. And the sentence, I mean, it's not a bad sentence, but like I feel like I spent a little too long on it. You know, trying to figure out a clean way to put this man into the story. It would still need a revision, but you know, this part right here, I tried to insert a little detail about magic, that, you know, there is a limit, like an energy limit on it, a little further back up. I tried to insert it, force it into the detail about the bronze guards, the invading soldiers, setting the whole town on fire. But it just didn't work with the pacing, so I just cut it out entirely and kept the wording the same. This whole situation where they're being taken into the town square, being cornered in their own town, it was part of the struggle. Before I even sat down to write it, before I recorded it, I tried to figure out what was going to happen next, and this is what I came up with. Not bad. Good job, me. But every step of the way I was just struggling with details, adding details, like this right here. Like, it's sort of kind of a flashback of what this space means to Aranthis. Not quite sure if it fits with the pacing or the moment, but it's in there. And getting a little complicated with the structure of the sentence, adding so much, you know. The knight statue, that was added last second. Like, oh wait, in the last session, she prayed to the knight. Well, I guess let's personify the knight into a deity, and that's what's in the middle of the town square, is this statue of the embodiment of night, or their interpretation of night, holding up the moon and made of feldspar. At least that was the first material to come to mind, that would sparkle like stars, right? I didn't include that detail in, you know, the sparkling like stars, because I didn't think about it at the time, but I thought, right here, feldspar. I just thought feldspar, okay, that's a rock. Only later did I realize, oh wait, like, that's, you know, not bad, because it sparkles like stars. Yeah, good job. But yeah, they see night as something, or someone, or something to be loved instead of feared. So let's see. There was a moment, I don't know if it's passed already, but as I was editing the video without the commentary, I saw a moment where the sentence was like, here's another moment where I try to force a lot of detail into the moment, but there was a moment that, oh, it was with the man, when we first noticed the man coming out of the alleyway with the children in his arms. Aranthis noticed a man come out of the alleyway out of the corner of her eye, and then the next sentence was, she noticed flames licking over the tops of the buildings. That could have been simplified and be worded something to the effect of, you know, she noticed him out of his corner of her eye, and then the next sentence could just get rid of she noticed entirely and just describe the flames licking over the buildings. So, you know, it's just something that can be cleaned up. But again, you know, it's the rough draft, so I can't be too hung up about that right now. And also, I don't know if I'm going to revise this whole thing. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I want to try and keep it going for a while, at least. And here's where okay, so a little something about my formatting, those parentheses right there. I will often use parentheses to, like, fence off a sentence or word or phrase or something, because I just don't know how to word it or what word to use in that moment. And it was late at night when I was doing this, and I didn't have any idea how to word the sentence at the time, so I just fenced it off. So So whenever you see a parentheses from me, it's not always like right here, the thing that's like a comb, like a rooster's comb. That thing on the, I still don't know what it's called, I didn't look it up. That thing that's like a, on the Spartan helmets, made out of horsehair, whatever. And all this description of armor and such is on the spot. It's just in the moment, like, okay, what does this armor look like? Let's have it resemblant of their culture in some way or fashion. And the whole, I noticed earlier as well, the serpent swallows the moon week by week. I thought about that earlier, and I'm like, wait a minute. The moon's phases go by every month, not every week. And then I thought, well, it's a fantasy world, so maybe the moon's really fast, so maybe we'll just keep it like that, it's fine. Oh, and here's where we end, right here. I have no idea what I'm going to do after this. I'm stuck right now, and I gotta freaking write. I gotta sit down for another couple hours and write something. And I don't know what to do. But that's it. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to Working Title, The Emerald Knight, Part 3. So I'll start off by talking about the continuation of where we left off, or where I left off. As I said last time, I was stuck. I didn't know where to turn next. And, before I sat down to write this session of the book, I gave it some thought, and because the objective was to get them out of the town somewhere or other. And initially I thought, well, I thought of the chapel, and initially I thought, well, the chapel is probably taller than most of the other buildings, right? So maybe they could get on top of the chapel and run run on the rooftops to get out of the city, or the village. And I was like, I thought it would be interesting to see, a fire. I want to see these characters run through fire. But the closer and closer I got to that point, it felt more and more ridiculous. So we'll get to that part later. But I went kind of the opposite route with that. So one thing I wanted to touch on right here, in this moment where Aranthus is basically stuck in the middle of town square, and is, she sees all this fire around the town. She grew up here, seeing all this fire burn down her life, really. I thought that showing her enraged, having this moment of rage, would be pretty interesting and perhaps unexpected, because instead of having her just fall straight into sorrow or fear, or there is fear, but just this rage takes over for a moment. and it can be something to use potentially later on as we progress through the story. Related to that, I would like I'll say that all these other characters, such as Aranthus's father, her mother, brother, everybody, anybody who's not her, are pretty bland. But I mean, because I'm so focused on events, what's happening, what's going to happen next, how can I get these characters, or this character in particular, to the place where I want them to end up, especially when it comes to running into the other main character of the story. And I really wanted to get to that main character this session, but it just didn't happen. And I really hope that I do next time, because I just want to see him. I want to see him in action. Anyway, so yeah, like all these other characters seem pretty bland. An effect of like jumping straight into the action without any build up to it, and not getting to know these characters beforehand can do that. I mean, it's not like it can't work that way, but with the way I have it, I just don't think... I mean, again, it's the rough draft, but as it is right now, it's just not quite there. I don't feel like it is. And here and there, I'm trying to insert characterization as I can, as I go along. But again, I'm more focused on events and trying to progress. This chapel, I'm using the word chapel because I'm not entirely sure what the proper term for this building, this religious building, would be. I didn't want to use church, and chapel was the only other word that came to my mind. Synagogue, communion, I don't know. But chapel is just kind of a placeholder for now. And I wanted to describe the outside of the chapel more, even the inside, because there's a detail, like, there's a pretty, interesting detail in that this place doesn't have pews. But a detail like that, it's like Aranthus grew up in this town, and this is her culture, and with all this action going on, especially, why would she, even though it's in the third person, why would she focus on the detail that there are no pews? Because again, like, this is her town, and this is what she grew up with, this is what she's used to. She's not gonna really take note of that, especially in a fight or flight situation. And plus, she may not even have experienced other religious buildings like this. But like, as much as I wanted to include that, I thought maybe, okay, later on in the story, I mean, kind of spoilers, but I'm not going to have Aranthus die. She's going to escape. But, at some point, she can probably come across another dark elf village or city or whatever, and the other character that is with her, we can touch on those sorts of details later on, when the action is slowed down, you know what I mean? But including that here, it just didn't feel right, you know? The whole, like, motif of, like, the fire and the smog that started back with her rage moment. I thought, and using that, like, throughout this session here, just, I like that. I thought it was very good. This chapel, as I'm using, as I'm calling it for right now, it's made of wood, and there are these like metal altars around, like, the perimeter on the inside. Also, like, at the front of it, there's like a, you know, opposing the entrance is a big statue of a knight. And there are these other altars around the room, which is something to touch on later, but I don't know, I want to talk about it right now. Like, these other altars are like, they can either have constellations on them, or like other gods, maybe. I'm not entirely sure right now, but again, it wasn't a detail that seemed like it was worth noting. I mean, maybe it could have, you know, as things are going to hell, and maybe Aranthus takes note of these altars and the gods and whatever, but I didn't think about it at the time. Here's another smog motif thing. I don't know if motif is the right word to describe that, but I'm going to use it. I also keep forgetting about magic. Like, I know magic stuff is going on right now, but the magic is happening from the enemy's side. And though there wouldn't necessarily be like all-out magic warfare, I mean, just having our side, the side that we're following, use a little magic here and there. Like, probably not everybody is a magic user or is very adept at it, but you know, it could have made for a little something of more interest to happen as we're trying to escape, you know. But there hasn't quite been so much opportunity to use magic, especially with such a large opposing force bearing down on our group here. Yeah, so like I said, the whole escaping through the rooftops, it wouldn't have made sense. It would be... I mean, I guess I could have had it happen. Like, if they had no other choice, like, it would make sense, but from where I'm sitting, it's like, that would be a lot of chaos to try and communicate through the written word. A lot of chaos to try and control, you know? And, I mean, it'd be really disorganized from their standpoint, because it's like, maybe there's old people with them and they got bad hips or something, and having to carry children, like, that'd be really... I feel like that would end up being really sloppy. So, on top of being ridiculous, I feel like it would be really sloppy, so I just got rid of it entirely. And something to note here, when they're they're being surrounded by these by the enemy here. Uh, I I thought maybe a little more magic could be implemented here. Maybe they could have like drug Aranthus out of the hole like magically, and maybe they have all the townspeople bound, like they got magic handcuffs on or something. You know what I mean? It would probably make things a little more, a little more clean, maybe. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm coming up onto the end. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Hello, and welcome back to Working Title, The Emerald Knight, Part 4. I feel like I should say it's like Part 74 or something, because it just feels like it's been going on for so long already. But, I mean, this is only the 4th set of videos. I guess it's because of all the writing I've been doing, all the focus I've been giving it when I sit down to write and, focus outside of it. It's only been about a week or so. But anyway, to jump into things, from this point where I left off last time, I wasn't sure at all how things would play out. Certain things I wanted to have happen, but the little things in between, I wasn't sure how it was going to play out. Like Aranthus and her mother and brother, on their knees, caught by the enemy. I mean, how were things going to play from there, But I think I found something that's pretty satisfactory to me. There are a lot of moments right here where, like moments like this, where I go back up into parts that I've previously written and not so much change how things happen. I mean, yeah, but not so much change the situation. I change how things happen a little bit, but not so much the situation. That's what I want to avoid when working on this, when working on working title projects, is avoid going back to change the situation. Because that, at least in how I've wanted to set this up, it kind of defeats the purpose, trying to just work on it and progress every time I work on it in the designated time space that I give it. So the situation hasn't changed, but I added detail, really. I will try not to do that so much. I did it a lot this time. After I'd finished and looked back at the recording, I'd done it a lot. I found I'd done it a lot, and speeding it up to like 900% would be very. It would be hard to keep track of where in the story I was changing details or adding details. So I had to go back and slow certain parts down, especially when I go back up to a different part in the story prior to the moment right here at the bottom of, the document, whatever. But I need to try to be more aware of that when I do it, because I don't like editing. It gives me less editing to do. I'm not fond of editing. The captain of I mean, he's like the captain. Or he can be like the general or whatever. Um, it adding character to him. Like I couldn't. I before I sat down to write, I didn't think that just having him do his thing would be so interesting. You know, just execute people. Gives a little character and maybe a little hint to, oh, there's like, you know, a hint to the bad blood between these two races. This line's kind of funny. When you when you just read it regularly. But you know, it's not always about what they say. It's just how they say it. He could have just looked straight into Aranthus's mother's eyes and just like chewed out that no. Something that just really indicates like the seething history burning in him, like his history, like the bad blood between the races and behind the scenes. Um, read between the lines. But I needed him to say something, and it was the rough draft, and needed to keep things moving. I didn't know what else to really make him say in that moment. I feel like I've been like wording these sorts of sentences wrong that include Ranthus's mother and brother and father, like right there, her son's leg instead of like her brother's leg. I feel like that's the wrong syntax. Like it's confusing language to say it that way. It kind of makes it sound like her mother's brother instead of Aranthus's brother or her mother's son. You know what I mean? So I think this entire time I've been wording that wrong. I didn't give them names either, but it just I like having names come up in like dialogue and stuff, but I don't know. If I revise it, maybe we'll change that. I needed the enemies' helmets open, like open faced, so we can see their faces. I wanted to see their faces. It probably would make more sense to have like a visor or something, or whatever that frontal protection. I think it's called a visor. Is called on armor. But I wanted to see his face and have some character, more than just him saying stuff. This moment where I combined the electricity and fire, that was spur of the moment. I struggled so hard to like that moment. I struggled really hard to like describe or communicate like how should I communicate like Aranthus's mother getting stabbed. And I just sat there for at least a couple solid minutes. I'm like, okay, let's just put something down and keep moving, because part of the point of working title is to keep things moving within reason. I don't want to be stuck on one sentence for too long. But that moment with the electricity and the fire, and hearkening back to previous moments in this first chapter. We're still in the first chapter. I don't know when to. I mean, I guess I'll have long chapters, because I guess I'll have the next chapter start right after all this business goes down. Anyway, but harkening back to previous moments, I thought it was very good to call back to that stuff and have it come to sort of a head in this one moment of like even bigger tension or detriment. Like in the beginning it was shock, like, oh, what's going on? And then eventually it becomes anger because the shock has sort of digested, and now Aranthus was focused on, this is what's happening. I understand what's happening now. And then eventually it got to the point where it was like shock and this is what's happening right now, like combined, I guess. You know, just hitting the points and getting higher and higher with the drama, the dramatic moments, to that point where electricity and fire combine, and then she's like kneed in the face with by one of the soldiers, and that numb moment of where she's dazed on the ground, and her ears are ringing, like she was kneed pretty hard. I mean, I don't say it kneed, like she was kneed in the face, but it can be whatever hits her. Somebody hits her, so. But yeah. There was I used this method of, the dream parts were really just really good too. I really liked including that, because it might have been a dream, like she's dazed to begin with, and it can't quite think straight, so it could have been a dream, like transitioning from like the first line of the story to this moment near the end of chapter 1. I thought that was really nice. Anyway, the moment when she's dazed and can't really hear, that's not the first time that I've used that method, like to represent action that's happening without needing to get into the nitty-gritty of what is, like, you have a lot of characters in one place and action is happening. What is everyone saying all at the same time? You don't have to deal with that because she can't hear. The character we're following can't hear. All she can really do is just take in information as she can through sight, when she can see whatsoever. And that's not the first time I've done that. I did, the first time I did that was like a couple years ago in a fan fiction that I was writing, that I'd written, and I just thought it was brilliant. Like, not to brag or anything, but man, I still love that moment to this day. I'm talking about like as if I'd written it 10 years ago. But I mean, I can put that. I can put that fan fiction in the description, I guess, a link to it. But I mean, it's pretty long, so I mean, if you're interested, but it's up to you. Anyway, this moment right here, nearing the end of this session of writing, I strongly felt I was like writing myself into a corner, because like, okay, now we have these other players. How are things going to play out now? I wanted certain things to happen, and with the way, because you think you have something happen, and then you're writing it, and then you have the big event in mind, and then as you're writing it, you start thinking about the details, the smaller details. Like, okay, well, of course he would like drag her out of the way, like that would make sense, and then at least put her somewhere, and get in front of her to protect her. Because, I mean, there's probably no way that he can outrun all of these soldiers all at once, and, I mean, and also leaving behind his fellow guards to... I mean, it would make sense for him to do that, to run away with his own daughter. But anyway, I'm coming up quick on the end, and it's just... I'm really tense about doing the next session of writing. I'm not entirely sure how to play out from there. But that's working title for you. I'm gonna have to see how things play out. That being said, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Hello, welcome back to Working Title, The Emerald Knight Part 5. To get into things, I will let you know that writing this session was very tough. You will see me pause a lot. Partly because I was a little daydreamy when writing. Well, hold that thought. Let me talk about this right here. This magic phrase. I kind of just threw something down because I needed something. Now, I've seen media and shows and stuff where they don't use magic words to do magic. And that, you know, that's great because, you know, they just get to the point. You know, they don't have to waste time with a word or a phrase to just do the magic. Like in Castlevania, they just go straight into it, and that's really nice. It gets straight to the point, to the action. But at the same time, there's a little like it just feels a little unceremonious, like when magic is happening, or when magic is brought out and used. There, it's almost spiritual in nature. Often it feels that way, and I feel it appropriate to admit something with your mouth, like of a spiritual nature, to admit something out loud with your mouth instead of just thinking it. Because at that point it just becomes like telepathy, if it's just all in your head, or pyromancy or whatever. I would like something that's ancient, has heritage and stuff, but how deep I go in with that will remain to be seen. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, if I can recall what the heck I was saying at this point, because there was a lot of action going on, and a lot of definitive actions that needed to happen, I felt, because there are moments during this session of writing that are poignant. That's a good word. Yeah. But these moments need to be hit because they are moments that will stick with Aranthis for certainly years to come, and certainly will have an effect on her in the future, especially when, you know, there are moments when she recalls this stuff that's going on, and all she can remember are images and maybe sounds or whatever, but the images will cut deep and stay deep, like this moment here. I'm pausing because I'm trying to figure out how to express it, but like Aranthis is remembering the first memories of this guy, and then witnessing his final moments. And the character just can't go out with just one statement. I mean, they can if they weren't, like, important or anything, but in terms of character, but I felt it ceremonious to have these people that Aranthis has known her practically her whole life, and taking in like taking with her through with the rest of her life these unique thoughts or feelings or images, as well as adding some characterization to how they go out. Yeah. And then it's kind of crazy how all this stuff just hits Aranthis all at once, just one after the other. It didn't feel like that when I was writing because I was taking so long with it, but seeing it play back now, it really did just all happen at once. In due course of the drama, amidst the drama, and for the drama of what's going on and the due process of things. But anyway, I was also, like I said earlier, I was daydreaming during this writing session, partly because I was trying to figure out what the heck to write down, and partly because I was thinking ahead, you know, how all of these events were going to play out accordingly to, like in previous sessions, end up where it needs to be or where I want it to be. And then there are moments where I just put something down for the sake of putting something down to rework later, because the main focus on this session was to get those final moments, those moments that would likely really stick with Aranthis for many years to come. Like, even when she's into, this is sort of a tangent, but like even when she's into like old age and only remembers like images, these sorts of things will pop up into her head, you know what I mean? This moment, comparing her heart to a tin cup, I thought that was, I felt pretty good when I was writing that. I still think it's pretty good. Maybe a little bit of revision, it'll be even better, but I thought that was pretty good. Reminds me of Toni Morrison's Beloved. Don't know why I had to say it like that, but one of the characters, Toni Morrison, compares his heart to a tobacco tin case, and how it, at a certain point in the story, it's like rusted shut and described, you know, in a similar nature in other points of the story, but it's always about the tin case. But I don't really see myself keeping the tin cup as her heart. We'll see. I find myself running out of things to really talk about, that are of enough import to really talk about, things that I haven't necessarily talked about before. And I don't want these commentaries to really be me repeating myself again and again. I will say that Aranthis's father's he goes out really over the top. And I am okay with that. But yeah, I'm running out of... For this session, I feel like I'm just running out of things to really talk about. I haven't really run into that issue until now, but there's really nothing much that happened in terms of difference compared to like previous sessions. This one is like just really focused on these final moments, and like I spent a long time trying to get those feeling at the very least unique. And the feelings Aranthus has as these moments come to pass. I finally finished the thumbnail, the serviceable cover for the Emerald Knight, the sword, and the little jewel. I spent a while making that. It spent longer. It always takes longer than you think. Always. I thought it turned out really well, though. And I enjoyed working on it, but at the same time I was very angry when I was working on it because things weren't looking right, they weren't lining up right. And I tell you, that hilt of the sword was just the worst of the whole thing. It was so aggravating to deal with. It looks really simple, but I thought it would be. But at the angle that it's in, well... I always feel whenever I'm making a new art piece, like a digital art piece, by the end of it, I just feel... I mean, I feel relieved, but I also feel just so silly. And just feel like... just feel like that I just don't... Just feeling like a novice because I'm struggling so much and trying to get it to look the way that I want it to look, you know? Like, I wasn't, like, bent on perfectionism, but, like, I wanted it to look nice. And just feeling like a novice and trying to get it looking nice. But anyway, back to this. This is the moment. This is the moment right here that we have been waiting for this whole time. We finally got to the new character. This is another moment where I kind of just throw something down to be of service. And I will admit, I'll be the first to admit that it's very lackluster. This character's entrance, it feels lackluster, especially compared to all the other dramatic moments we've just had. But, hey, we did it. We got to her. Shh. I didn't say that. Anyway. Yeah. I wanted to add one little detail to the sword, not the sword on the title screen, but the one right here, the bronze sword. I wanted to add that it was... I didn't think of it at the time, but I wanted to add that it was covered in blood. But anyway, coming up on the end of it here, and hopefully we'll get to things that are really interesting and dramatic in the next time. Thank you for watching. Hello and welcome back to the Emerald Knight Part 6. In this part, I wanted to talk about... I felt it was a good point to talk about the expression of the passage of time in writing. And what I mean by that is, say you have a part in the narrative that is where not much action is going on, maybe nothing is really going on, maybe the characters aren't even really saying anything, but for some reason or other, it becomes important to express time passing without explicitly saying so. Such as, like, the hands on the clock moved from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock. I mean, unless that's, like, important to the writing style or the character or the story in some shape or form. But in this session of writing, there are several moments, several parts where I simply say, like, the characters just stare at each other. And I thought that this was a good part to talk about this sort of thing. So, what keyed me in to expressing time passing in a narrative was not something that I read. I first came across, or was enlightened, so to speak, about this sort of thing around 4 years ago, and it wasn't in something that I read, but something that I watched. I was inspired from Japanese media, Japanese film especially, like the old stuff, like Tokyo Story. And in movies like that, they have a lot of in between like scenes with characters, they have a lot of environment shots of, like, wind blowing through the trees or the grass, or waves rolling up on a beach, maybe architecture, something like that. And you know, subconsciously at least, you're given the impression that time is passing by. And I thought that was a really smart way to communicate that. Like, showing environment. And I started implementing or being more conscious of that in my writing from then on. And, you know, instead of... and you can implement it, like, in between dialogue. So, like, say characters are walking down a beach. And, you know, they're talking, taking a stroll. And, you know, maybe they're talking about something kind of serious, or maybe something silly. Well, let's start with serious. So they're talking about something serious, and then in between dialogue pieces, as they're strolling, maybe you write about the environment, about the waves, how the waves roll up on the beach, to maybe give a inclination or the intonation, the illusion of how one character or the other is feeling. Like, maybe the waves rolled up on the beach languidly. Or if it's like a silly conversation, maybe like a little hermit crab just walks up and just walks across their path or something. Something, you know. You can use environment to your advantage to express time passing, instead of explicitly saying a moment passed before the character spoke again. I feel like that sort of thing is a little too easy to fall back on. I mean, especially for people that are just starting out. I mean, I did it. But yeah, it was a Japanese film, of all things, that keyed me into it. It wasn't from a book. No, once you pick up on that, you know, it becomes easier to, you know, see that stuff in reading while you're reading. And, you know, it doesn't have to be environment. It can, the passage of time can be expressed through memory or flashback or feeling or emotion or so on and so forth. There are multiple ways to do it. As an example, Toni Morrison's Beloved, like that book is just rife with exemplary passages and pages of the passage of time. And, you know, she never explicitly said time passed. For example, now I don't remember verbatim, but something along the lines of this. In one passage, or part of the story, there is a room. It's a very drab and desaturated room. But in that room, there's this blanket, or this quilt, that has two, like, vibrant orange patches in it, sewn into it. And the passage just focuses in on that. And it's kind of artistic in a way, like visually artistic in a way, because, like, the room is very drab and desaturated, but, like, there's these two orange spots that are bright. But that's a little bit of a tangent. Anyway, so the passage focuses in on that, and then we are pretty seamlessly taken into a memory or a flashback. And maybe it goes on for like 5 pages of the flashback, I don't know. But yeah. By the end of it, at least subconsciously, you're given the impression that time has gone by, maybe even a half hour, maybe longer, who knows? I mean, I don't have the context, so... But yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend Beloved. A lot of smart and clever writing. But anyway, that was, as an example, expressed time passing expressed through memory and flashback. Or you can kind of go the other way. For an example, from my own writing, from that fan fiction that I mentioned earlier, I remember a part that it was a section. It's like a little, almost like a poem, but it's not really a poem. It's just like one sentence, another sentence, a few more sentences. But they're like between ellipses. You know how some books or stories might break off the end of a scene or a part of the book with ellipses, and then maybe the next section is broken off with another ellipses. So it's like in between two ellipses. All I express, more or less, is just the passage of the seasons. So it's like autumn came, autumn went. Or no, it was summer. Summer was first, then autumn. Autumn came and went. then winter. And that's pretty much it. The reason I do that is because there was a lot of story before that section, and then there was going to be a lot of story after that section. But the years leap in time needed to happen, because that's when we come across the character again that is important to the story, that is more or less the focus of the story. That's when the character whom we're following comes in contact with that character again after about a year. So it was important to show the passage of time without going over every little detail that happened within that year, because it wasn't pertinent to the specific story that I was telling. As another example, a more telly kind of example, I remember there were plenty of passages in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. I'm not sure if I pronounced his name correctly, but in that series there was plenty of passages that communicated like either Lisbeth or Blomkvist, like like going about their business. Maybe they're on a computer, maybe they're writing something, maybe they researching something, looking through newspapers or clues for the next to figure out where to go next. But I mean, it's been a while since I've read that, so it's not going to be verbatim either, but it's like they're doing their thing and then they stop to have a break or lunch with coffee and sandwiches. So much so, I saw that the coffee and the sandwiches thing pop up so much. Anyway, I was about to say, is this all what Swedish people eat? That and Billy's Pan Pizza? But, yeah, that's a more telly way of doing it. It's fine. I was fine with it. It's been a while since I've read it. But it does exemplify that characters are doing, tending to important business. And, it should be important to let the reader know how long, doing work, like murder mystery kind of work, should take. But anyway, yeah, I just wanted to touch on this part. I thought it was a good, like, even though I don't have like really specific examples, meaning like verbatim examples, other than like my fan fiction one, I did think that it was fine, because at least if you don't already, it makes you conscious or aware of this thing that is out there, and be able to take notice of it more, maybe implement it more, and whatever. So yeah. As for the Emerald Knight Part 6 right now, I think I will change a few details here and there, but I'm coming up on the end. Thank you. Hello, welcome back to the Emerald Knight Part 7. Like I mentioned at the end of last time, or I tried to, I was, coming up on the end really quick. I wanted to change I might change a couple of details from last time. I wanted to change this quote here, mostly because that the way it was before was came off as a little too calm and collected, or that he knew exactly what was going on, sort of thing. And it didn't quite feel right, especially, since the Black Knight killed his men, and so quickly too. So I just wanted to change that up a little bit. And a couple other things here and there. On that note, yeah, I changed "this is personal" as well, because that seemed a little too much. Like I said, like a little too much. Like you knew exactly what was going on, sort of thing, and I didn't feel like that was right. But on the subject of changing these details, adding a little more or whatever, in this part, there's a great lack of referencing the Black Knight's height, or his girth, his size, power. I mean, there's kind of an allusion to it in the way they fight each other, but I feel like there just isn't quite enough of it to really get a sense of how big and strong the Black Knight is. I mean, he's like twice the size. It comes off as like twice the size of Coal Eyes, especially with his armor. So he's big. But most of this part is fighting choreography, and that was really tough. Because, well, for one thing, I didn't want just like flurries of attacks, like you see in anime a lot. When two characters are fighting each other, there's like flurry of sword attacks or punching, whatever. I mean, I don't really got anything against it, but I didn't personally want that, especially since this ain't an anime and people have stamina. And they're lugging around their weapons and their armor and moving around and everything. But I just didn't want a flurry of attacks, like especially since it's like a one-on-one battle. And from what I understand, knights, at least knights back in the medieval times, they would start learning to fight like when they were like 7 years old. They would start taking up, I don't know if it was like a training sword or what, but they would like start pretty young, start learning how to fight pretty young, so they'd get that Oops. I guess I gotta bleep that out. They'd get that like in their they get the fighting like in their DNA, you know what I mean? So like, all this fighting choreography is like really like dancing, like very particular movement and pointed movement. Everything they do is on purpose. I mean, that sounds obvious, but like I wanted to really see all of this obvious stuff. I wanted to know what they were. I wanted to be able to see what they were doing. And Coal Eyes, I feel kind of like he fell a little too easy, but especially since he's like a captain, and, you know, maybe he has been training since he was 7 or something. But at the same time, he's probably never fought somebody like the Black Knight, someone who's so big and strong, like with such a height advantage and strength advantage over him. So there is that. Maybe he was, just repeatedly caught off guard, or just didn't really know how to handle the Black Knight. But, I mean, that sort of thing, that wasn't really communicated. I don't think that was communicated well enough, that sort of thing. Especially because, like, the Black Knight, I didn't reference the Black Knight's height and strength too much, or enough to really have that come off that way. But I do like the uniqueness of each bout between the Black Knight and Coal Eyes, and how Coal Eyes ends up on his butt every time, each time. I like that. It's pretty unique. I think that's pretty good. Something to, really revise and make nice, make a lot nicer in revision. But, something like this, like fighting choreography, that I feel like is really what I'm wanting to see anyway, should be like really particular, or, what they do, their actions that they take should really communicate to the reader, like, these people know what they're doing. These individuals got this stuff, like, in their blood, like I said. And in order to do that, I feel like I would have to take a lot more time to really, like, blueprint it. I mean, this is the blueprint, but I don't know, just to make a little more relatable, like meaningful in their actions, and that they know that what they're doing. I'm just going back and forth. Anyway, the only other than that knowledge of, like, knights started training when they were like 7 or something, other than that, like, really the only reason I know any sort of fighting choreography or terminology is because of when I used to do theater. I was in a couple of plays that implemented sword fighting, Romeo and Juliet especially, and we took classes on sword fighting, all of us together, like in a line, and we'd practice over and over again. Advance, retreat, parry, thrust, slash. And that was really interesting and fun. But that's really the only reason why I have, like, superficial knowledge of fighting terminology, sword fighting terminology anyway. I like that the Black Knight laughed at Coal Eyes. I think that already passed by, but I like that he laughed at him. No, I think he laughs at him right around here. Yeah. I like that he laughs at him. Like, that it's not hardy, or that nor that it makes the Black Knight, jiggle around with like Santa. Gives a sort of a characterization, like, oh, maybe they're not doing it because they think this situation is funny. Maybe there's another purpose for it. And I think maybe I had a thing for the word vomit this part, because I use it like 2 or 3 times. No, I don't have a fetish, no. But I don't know what I'm saying. No, that's the finisher. For the finisher, I'm gonna be real and tell you that in my mind, I had in my mind a finishing move from God of War, the first one from 2005, and it's in God of War 2 as well. But in the first game, there are satyrs, and the finishing grab move on them is Kratos does, like, he has his blades, so he does like an uppercut, like a blade uppercut, and knocks the satyr on the ground on his back. And the satyrs, they have this like staff with blades on either end of it. And so after Kratos does the uppercut and the satyr lands on his back, Kratos steps forward and like steps on the staff, and it kicks up like a skateboard, twirls in the air, and grabs it and just brings it down into their gut. And that's what I had in mind for taking out this guy. And I enjoy it. I really do. I really like it. I think it's a fitting end for this guy. Now, I'm not 100% sure if, the pike end of a halberd can really penetrate armor. I mean, with enough force, surely. I don't know if, like, a normal person could be able to do it. But if anything, it can show that's one of the things that could possibly show the Black Knight's strength, how strong they are. I really like that Aranthus throws up on Coal Eyes. I mean, I would believe it, like, getting kneed in the face, like like when you get hit hard enough by something, sometimes you just don't even say anything, or you don't even scream. You just feel all the pain, and it just makes you really nauseated, right? There's that, like, she got kneed in the face, and then there's all this other stuff that happened. And yeah, I would totally believe it. And it's like the cherry on top, He gets stabbed to death, and then he gets thrown up on. It's pretty good. Oh, from like around this point, from when the Black Knight is putting their sword back on their person, to like the end of this part, I'm kind of iffy on it. Mostly because of how the Black Knight is acting. I like, while it's kind that's probably my best quote ever, but But the Black Knight, the way they're acting up until the end, I'm kind of iffy about it because I don't think it quite fits with the character I'm wanting to create with them. So I might change this part up a little bit too, maybe even more so. There's a quote by the Black Knight at the end of this that that's right here. While it's very different, you see all the parentheses, like that shows how concerned I am with it. I'm just, while it's different and interesting, I don't think it quite fits the character. But anyway, that's all I have time for this part. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Hey, welcome back to The Emerald Knight Part 8. So like I said last time, I was iffy about the way Part 7 ended. And you can see I'm sectioning off the part, pretty much the part where the knight puts their sword back on themselves. But I'm redoing the ending of part 7 because it didn't feel quite right with the character, with the knight. And I'm redoing it so that it'll work a lot better with building characterization for the knight, and partly for Aranthus as well. As you can see, I didn't completely delete that ending, but I'm taking bits and pieces from it as I deem necessary to just pick up and grab, parts that worked from last time and I was okay with. And I'm putting them in this new ending of chapter 1. So like, going along with characterization, I especially wanted to exemplify, like, the knight's agenda, what they're up to, at least in a vague sense. And it builds like a little more mystery about them. Like with this little flask that he's got. And he's filling it with blood. Anywhere I can, I'm trying to insert evidence of character, or of physicality even, like what they look like. There's somewhere near the end of this part where I do mention something about the knights. I think like their height, how big they are compared to Aranthus, because Aranthus has to look up at them to look them in the face, like even though she's standing up. So it's things like that, that I put attention on to insert a little bit of characterization, even though it's indirectly showing characterization of a character, because Aranthus has to look up to look at them, so therefore they're pretty tall. I really like the description of the knight's voice. I've got a lot of parentheses in it because I wasn't sure on certain words. Like, I'm not sure on what a gully is, or if gully awash was even a that might be too awkward of a phrase or something. But in the general sense, I like the description of the knight's voice. I was taken aback by how soon I would need a lot more like information about this world. Meaning that it would be very helpful if I sat down and really just come up with a bunch of names and some kind of rules and lore associated with this world that I'm trying to build. I was taken aback by how quickly I needed that because, as I've said before, like the whole point of like choosing fantasy, having never written fantasy before and not knowing what I'm getting myself into, the whole point of it was to just keep on writing whatever I wanted, go on an adventure, whatever. Well, like I've said before, this needs details, and it sure would help to have a bunch of rules and stuff about this world set forth as you before you take the journey on writing your fantasy journey. Yeah. More in the way of showing characterization for the knight here in helping out Aranthus. Like, they got their own thing going on, but they take time to help Aranthus out. And I mean, I don't really know what to say about it. Maybe it's a thing. Maybe they took pity on them. Maybe there's something they like about them. Aranthus, I'm talking about. That they like about Aranthus. But it's interesting to have the knight just in the midst of all this really intense stuff that Aranthus is going through. Like, they just stop and be like, okay, I'll help you out, I guess. Oh, right here I'm talking about burning them. Like, there's a lot of fire around them. And, in some movies or stories or whatever, they have, like, cremation as an honorable burial for heroes and whatever. Like Hercules. Hercules, in the original story, in the myth, Hercules burns himself as like a final. It might have been one of his labors. I'm not sure, but like his final labor. I'm not sure, but I remember him that he cremates himself, makes a pyre for himself, and burns himself. But anyway, so I thought, with the limited time that they have, because surely more soldiers are going to be on the way pretty soon, because of all the fire and whatnot. Surely they could probably make some practical use of the fire, so to speak, and do this sort of thing. But then I got to thinking more about it. I'm like, wait a second, these plants are alive. These plants are like vibrant and green, and like these fires aren't really gonna last. It's probably not that dry. Probably not dry enough. So, and there's not enough like heavy fuel on the ground to really put the bodies on top of to cremate them. So, I mean, the only thing they can really do is just set them down, lay them out. And it's a nice juxtaposition between the knight and Aranthis, because in this moment it's like the knight's the more calm, collected, and worldly. Like they know, they're pretty knowledgeable, and the knight has a sense of honor, while Aranthis is like, she's understandably she's pretty broken up, and letting her emotions really get the better of her. I really liked the imagery of like Aranthis having this connection to her father's armor, and her finding comfort in it because she saw it practically every day. I like that quote from the knight. Like, okay, I've taken the time to help you out. Now it's time to move on. Oh, this moment is like, I wanted to insert some kind of a flashback sort of thing, but it feels a little too cliche with her family. Like, maybe they're cliche in the sense like it's a perfect family or something. But I mean, it's there, and it's something to work out later. But I'm just trying to insert anywhere I can, like the importance, like how important her family was to her. I mean, it's a given that she spent her whole life with them in this village. But I mean, it's important to really communicate that throughout the course of the story, I think. Going where I'm... Man, that just hit me. That sounds like that sounds like something Kratos would say, like in the new game. In the direction of deer. I didn't think about that when I wrote it. Honestly, I really didn't. There's more vomiting. Look at that. I swear. I don't. No, I don't. I really don't. I don't have... No. But there's like a little snippet of anger directed at the knight. Like from the square, how Aranthis felt that fire in her heart. So it cropped up a little bit here again, and it's probably going to be an important for lack of a better term, plaything, in terms of Aranthis's character. Oh, I, I feel like the Black Knight relents a little too easily in Aranthus wanting to, go with him. Yeah, she angled her head back to look up at him. She had to, because that's how tall he is. Um, but yeah, I feel like the Black Knight relents a little too easily, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. If it gets so far as revision, But yeah, I really need to sit down and all the junk that they just take at the end here. I didn't know what I wanted them to take, so I just had them take like everything that was practical. So I mean, that's probably going to change later. I'll probably just bring it back down to like just the sword. I don't know. Just sword and clothes. I don't know. But yeah, I really need to sit down and come up with a lot of lore and rules and stuff. It would really help so I don't have to do this guessing game as I'm writing it. Oh, sort of a reveal, sort of. But yeah, and then I delete all this stuff that I didn't use, because that's how it's gonna work. That's gonna be working title for you, man. But with that, that's part 8, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.